Hello, my name is Alan Camacho, and I'm going to be talking about the branches of biology and how life started in Earth. So, to start with, biology has a huge array of subdisciplines or fields of biology. There are more than 60 that have been around for hundreds of years, while others are far newer and have been developing very rapidly. Today I'm going to introduce you to many of the main fields, like biology, zoology, botany, microbiology, genetics, biochemistry, and ecology. Fields of biology, such as zoology and genetics, can be very broad topics and contain many specializations within each field. For example, an ethologist is an animal biologist that studies an animal behavior. An ecologist who looks at how organisms interact with each other and the environment may specialize in marine ecology, ecophysiology, population ecology, or a number of other topics within ecology. To start with, the first branch, it's anatomy. Anatomy is the branch of biology that deals with the study of the structure of the organisms and their parts. Biochemistry, it is concerned with the chemical and physiochemical processes that occur within living organisms. Biophysics, the science of the application of the law of physics to biological phenomena. Biotechnology is the exploitation of biological phenomena. Biotechnology is the exploitation of biological processes such as genetic manipulation of microorganisms for the production of antibiotics, hormones, etc. Botany. Botany is the study of plants, including their physiology, structure, genetics, and ecology. Cell biology, that is the study of structures and functions, and it revolves around the concept that the cell is the fundamental unit of life. Ecology deals with the relations of organisms to one another, to their physical surroundings. Genetics, the study of genes, genetic variation, and heredity in living organisms. Then it is marine biology that studies of the organisms in the ocean and other marine bodies of water. Microbiology, the study of microscopic organisms, those being unicellular, multicellular, or acellular. And the last one is zoology, that it is a scientific study behavior, structure, physiology, classification, and distribution of animals. Now I'm going to talk about how life started on Earth. It is estimated for Earth to be about 4.5 billion years old, and for much of that history it has been home to life in one weird form or another. Indeed, some scientists think life appeared the moment our planet's environment was stable enough to support it. The earliest evidence of life on Earth comes from fossilized mats of cyanobacteria called stromatolites in Greenland that are about 3.7 million years old. Ancient as their origins are, these bacteria, which are still around today, are biologically complex. They have cell walls protecting their protein producing DNA, so scientists think life must have begun much earlier. In fact, there are hints of life even in more primeval rocks. 4.1 billion years old zircons from Western Australia contain high amounts of a form of carbon typically used in biological processes. But despite approximately when life first appeared on Earth, scientists are still far from answering how it appeared. Many theories of the origin of life have been postponed, but since it's hard to prove or disprove them, no fully accepted theories exist. This was said by Diana Northup, which is a cave biologist in the University of New Mexico. The answer to these questions about how life started on Earth will not only fill one of the largest gaps in scientists' understanding of nature, but also will have an important implications for the likelihood of finding life elsewhere in the universe.
Living beings are Living beings have a high degree of complexity because they are constituted by biomolecules and by inorganic compounds such as water. Each living being can synthesize the components which are organized and constituted in the fundamental unit of life, the cell. The second point would be genetic code. All living beings share an essential characteristic, the genetic code. The genetic code is a sequence of nitrogenous bases that combine to produce words in a language understandable to all living beings, so it is considered to be universal. This fact shows that all living beings have a common ancestral origin. This code explains the relationship between the sequence of the nucleotides, triplets, and each amino acid. It is important to highlight that the meaning of the genetic code is not equivalent to DNA, genome, or genotype. The genetic code indicates the sequence of amino acids and that code for the 22 amino acids that constitute all the proteins of all organisms in the earth, whereas the genome is the set of genes contained in the chromosomes. They are different because the information to produce those proteins can be obtained in the DNA or the RNA, but the codification of amino acids is the same. The third point would be response to stimuli. Living beings can respond to different stimuli, such as light, sound, temperature, chemical substances, among others. Each species has developed mechanisms or sensory organs to capture, integrate, and respond to what happens in its environment or outside it. The fourth point would be homeostasis. Homeostasis refers to the set of self-regulation phenomena that leads to the conservation of steadiness in the composition and properties of the internal environment of an organism that allows to have a free life. The fifth point would be metabolism. Living beings use energy to maintain homeostasis and life. That means they must take components from their external environment, transport them, and use them for their benefit. Metabolism involves the destruction of molecules, that is catabolism, and the formation of new molecules, which is anabolism. Catabolic processes involve the releasing of energy containing the chemical bonds by destroying them. A good example of this is the glycolysis process, which is the breakdown of glucose molecules to obtain adenosine triphosphate. All living beings can carry out anabolic and catabolic processes. Hence, the construction of a new component depends on the destruction of other. In this way, organisms can survive, grow, and perpetuate their stay on the planet. The sixth point would be growth. All living beings, to a greater or lesser extent, increase their volume, that is, they grow. The seventh point would be reproduction. To perpetuate their species, individuals must reproduce themselves. Reproduction implies that the information transmitted from one generation to the next is done through the inheritance molecular. In the genetic code containing the DNA is found all the information necessary to create a new individual, which will express characteristics similar or identical to those of his parents. Reproduction can be asexual, sexual, or parasexual. Asexual reproduction, its main characteristic is the fact that the descendant is genetically identical to its predecessor, since in this modality, sperm and ovules are not involved, and therefore there is no genetic variability. The diversity of prokaryotes is endless. Regarding the metabolism, they can be anaerobic. They can survive, which means they can survive in an environment without oxygen, or aerobic, which means they develop in an environment with oxygen. On the nutrition side, they can be heterotrophs, which are organisms that cannot make their biomolecules from inorganic substances, or autotrophs, that are organisms that synthesize all the substances essential for their metabolism from inorganic substances. Everything seems to indicate that there is no place on this planet where prokaryotes cannot survive. There are two types of eukaryotic cells, the animal and the vegetable. The most noticeable difference among them is the presence of the nucleus, the membranous compartment which the genetic material is confined. Animal cells are structurally more complex. They present distinctive features that define them. That is, animal cells are different in their components concerning the vegetable ones. The plant cell has components similar to those of the animal cell because both are eukaryotic cells. The organelles that have a similar composition and function in both cell types are plasma membrane, nucleus, cytoskeleton, Golgi apparatus, and ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, and peroxisomes. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alessandra Del Valle and I'm going to talk about the history of the microscope, the cell, and the cell theory. The history of the microscope. The observation of the world of living things began with the invention of the magnifying lenses, which are a very rudimentary version of the microscope now known as the composite microscope. The invention of the oldest magnifying lens took place in the Syrian Empire in the 715 before Christ. Also, the Greek, Egyptian, Roman, and Babylonian civilization manufactured and used magnifying glasses. Who invented the microscope, the compound microscope? We can say that nobody knows the answer. Perhaps Zacharias Janssen in the 1590s, Galileo Galilei in 1609, or Cornelius Deverell in 1690 were the inventors. What we can say is that the microscope was invented at the end of the 16th century. The first person who names the invention of the microscope was Giovanni Faber in 1625. Zacharias Janssen, he had the idea of combining two lenses inserted at the ends of a tube and realized combining the lenses in this way. It was very probable that Janssen did not foresee the potential of the invention for the science. Who was able to glimpse the importance and use of for scientific purposes was Robert Hooke in 1665. It was Hooke who linked the history of the microscope with the cell. Years later, Anton van Leeuwenhoek developed a new technique to manufacture lenses that allowed him to observe samples that magnify up to 200 times. He published his results in 1684. Microscopes were not very popular among scientists due to the aberrations caused by the defects of the lenses and the very nature of the light. Until the 18th century, scientists were able to correct these defects. Anton van Leeuwenhoek, with the lenses he had crafted, observed and described in more detail cells such as spermatozoa and protozoa, and even some bacteria. Although the research continued for many years, it was not until 1830, almost 2 centuries after the observation and Leeuwenhoek, that Theodor Swan and Matthias Sladen proposed what later became the first postulate of a cell theory. Rudolf A. von Vogelkopf identified the mitochondria in 1957. Theory. There are 3 persons that are recognized as the authors: Swan, Sladen, and Virchow. The postulates of the cellular theory affirm that first, the cell is the morphological and structural unit of all living beings. In other words, all living beings are made up of cells and the products these cells generate. 2. Omni cellula ex cellula, which means every cell comes from a persisting one. 3. The cell is the physiological unit of life. All vital contracts that take place within the cells, and only one is enough to generate life. 4. The cell contains the hereditary information for the control in this development, growth, reproduction, and to transmit the information to the next generation. We can add a 5th postulate: the disease begins in the cell. Structural physiological unit of life is healthy. The individual is healthy, but should the unit loses its health and its balance propagates, where there with the disease will be a disease.
Hello, my name is Jorge Mauricio Gonzalo Lozano, and today I'm going to talk to you about the different cellular transportations and the levels of organization. One type of cellular transportation is active. This transport spends energy and goes against gradient of concentration. Another one is passive. This transport doesn't not waste energy and goes in favor of concentration gradient. Simple diffusion, the molecules cross lip Baylor. Facilitated diffusion, the passage of molecules depends on the presence of the integral membrane proteins and allow this passage. This protein can form channels or complex transporters. And endocytosis, incorporation of materials into the cell. Exocytosis, secretion of the materials produced by cells. Levels of organization. The first level is the complexity is that of the atom. Although if we are strict, we could even describe the subatomic level. The atoms form molecules and biomolecules. The biomolecules constitute of the organelles and structures. And then goes the cell, a set of cells spaced in specific functions from a tissue. The tissue form organs. The organs are grouped into systems and multicellular organisms. The system constitutes the individual. Now let's see levels that go beyond a single individual. A population is made up of individuals of the same species. The community or biocenoses is formed by a set of population. The group of population all domains together with the abiotic forms. Physical environment constitutes the ecosystem. Finally, the biosphere is the total set of ecosystems present on Earth.
Homeostasis. The term homeostasis comes from the union of two Greek words, which in Spanish are translated as homeos and stasis. The first means equal or similar, the second, state or stability. In the biological context, it refers to the quality of organisms to preserve the internal conditions despite the changing conditions in its exterior and interior. An example that will be familiar to you is the regulation of body temperature. Preserving the balance of functions requires the participation of a series of factors that are responsible for it, and are the variable, the sensor or receiver, the integrator, the set point, and the effector. The response of this circuit can be stopped once that reach the set point, what is called negative feedback, or increase the answer, positive feedback. This preservation of internal conditions is achieved thanks to metabolism, which includes anabolic and catabolic reactions. The balance is reached thanks to the mechanisms of self-regulation that every living being has. Then we have the muscular system, that it provides movement, support, and heat production. We have the nervous system, that it collects, transfers, and processes information. Then we have the reproductive system, that it produces genetics and sexual hormones. We have the respiratory system, that it delivers air to places where gaseous exchange occurs. We have the skeletal system, that it supports and protects the soft tissues of the body. The urinary system, that it eliminates excess of water, salts, and waste products of blood and body. We have the immune system, that it defends against microbiological pathogens. Now I'm going to talk about the organ systems. First, we have the cardiovascular, that it transports oxygen, nutrients, and other substances to the cell. Then we have the lymphatic, that it defends the body against infections and diseases. We have the digestive system, that it processes food and absorbs nutrients, minerals, vitamins, and water. We have the endocrine, that it provides communication within of the body through hormones. We have the integumentary system, that it provides protection against injuries and loss of fluids, as well as physical defenses against infections.
Hello, I am Eduardo Garza, and I will talk about health. Health and disease, health in adolescence, and healthy lifestyle, and sickness. Everything in our body is finely regulated by mechanisms that allow us to maintain homeostasis, and therefore health. Therefore, disease is the loss of balance and homeostasis. The Greeks professed a culture of care of the body and mind, which is reflected in the phrase, a healthy mind in a healthy body. They defined health as a natural disposition and disease as an unnatural condition. Contrary to the Greeks, Catholic philosophy understood health as a gift from God. Thanks to him, we preserve our health. In the 5th century before Christ, people understood that the disease does not have a magical explanation nor position caused it, nor it had to do divine punishment. On the contrary, illness has its cause and disorders, lifestyle, or disturbances in the dynamic balance of physical body considering the disease as a specific cause. According to the vision of philosophy, the disease is understood as a fight of body and its natural resources against a malignant cause. In order to development of science, in order to understand the role of human being in his health, it was possible to pinpoint the factors that influence the preservation of health or the appearance of illness. These factors included the public health actions, lifestyle. Health is an issue worldwide concern because it is the